I would really like to invite the panel to the stage, starting with Ludmila Popova. She's the Director of Digital Infrastructure of NIBC. There she is. Give her an applause. She will moderate this panel with prestigious experts. The second one I would like to ask to the stage is Ms. Anke Schlichting. She's also working for NIBC. She's the CTO. And of course, welcome. Organizations like NIBC are extremely important, of course, for financing the development and maintenance of the infrastructure, which also applies to Rob Visser, Mr. Rob Visser. He's from the Nationale Nederlanden, from NN Group. And of course, we also have invited people from the infrastructure community itself. So may I please ask to the stage Mr. Alex Goldblum. He's the CEO from Eurofiber. And finally, Mr. Martijn Blanken. He's the CEO of Extra Infrastructure. So welcome. I leave you to the good hands of Ludmila to ask you and to have a nice dialogue about the infrastructure and financing the infrastructure.
Thank you, Paul.
And good luck. See you later.
Good morning, everyone. Today in our panel, we gathered high executives or high-level executives from different companies, from different two groups of the companies. And on one side, they have different roles concerning digital infrastructure. But on the other side, the investing in digital infrastructure is very critical for both of these groups. We have the chief informational officers from NIBC and NN, who rely, of course, on digital infrastructure every day. And on the other side, we have Extra Infrastructure and Eurofiber, who are active across Europe and Transatlantic, and who provide us with the digital infrastructure. Both have very wide range of the customers, and I hope this gives us a very good grasp on the status of digitalization of Europe. Let's start with a short round of introduction. Anke, I'm giving you the word.
Yes, so good morning. My name is Anke Schlichting. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at NIBC, and I'm also part of the board. And happy to be here with all of you.
Rob?
Yeah, well, good morning. My name is Rob Visser. It's great to be in this very high diversity group of people. I'm the NN Group CIO. And yeah, like Anke, very happy to be here and looking forward to it.
Welcome.
Good morning, Alex Goldman here, CEO of Eurofiber. And I'm in that phase of terminal seriousness, so I'll do my best to ask a few questions.
I would have guessed you were a bit older, Alex.
Thank you. Martijn Blanken, I'm the CEO of Extra Infrastructure. It's a data center connectivity provider in Europe and the Americas. So we're the plumbers of the internet, if you will.
Very nice. I want also to put two of our speakers in the spotlight today for the awards they received last year. This is Rob, who was recognized as the CIO of the Year in the Netherlands.
I paid a whole lot of money for that.
So, and Alex, who received the Charles K. Award from the FTTH European Council. And to conclude, please. And to conclude, my name is Ludmila Popova. I am the Digital Infrastructure Director in the financing team of NIBC. Our team focuses on the debt investments in data centers and fiber. And today we support more than 40 clients with their growth in Europe. So let's kick off then. In our panel today, we would like to focus on the end customers and the end customers' needs and how it translates towards the digital infrastructure and its growth. So let's start with the consumers. I'm looking at Rob, who is the Chief Information Officer of a large organization with 20 million customers. We would like to talk about the consumers. They, of course, the needs of today, obviously, it's 24/7. We need to have fast internet, always available service in the security environment. Can you walk us through a bit through your digital journey and how the client's needs impacting it?
Yeah, sure. So, well, digital has a lot of meanings. Yeah? So if I look at digital, I always look towards the most important side for Nationale Nederlanden, that's its customers. So all products of Nationale Nederlanden are transforming themselves in I would say, unique sequences of zeros and ones. So all our products are digitalized right now. And yeah, that means, of course, also that we are investing heavily in technology. And I'm the CIO of NN, and a lot of my colleagues, they also call themselves now, for instance, CTO. Because in that, let's say, transition towards the digital journey, I mean, a lot of organizations feel that technology is the key to success. And that's where I'm a little bit different, to be honest. And that's also what I said in that whole CIO of the Year thing. If I have to rebrand myself, I would not call myself CTO, but CPO. Because I also believe very much in the, let's say, the equation that was shown previously. When you put a lot of new technology in an old organization, you get, let's say, a very expensive old organization. I think that's really true. So why I call myself CPO, if I have to give myself another name, it's I believe in the power of the people in the organization. So it's more Chief People Officer then. Yeah. So the differentiating factor that we make with our technology is not with technology itself. So I think a lot of technology is free to use, like glass, water, or electricity. I think it's really the people behind it and the craftsmanship that people have that make a differentiating factor towards our customers. So we invest heavily in craftsmanship, engineering, and we do it also with a lot of our partners here, because how strange this may sound, the first and foremost thing that our customers of NN want is that this all works. We all think that they are looking for innovation, they are looking for new propositions. But to be honest, what a customer really wants, and I think we're all customers in some shape or form, is availability, performance, and security. And that's very much, let's say, in the basics of where we put our infrastructure. So we have our on-prem data center, we use AWS and Azure. And together with those providers, we also heavily training the NN staff, the engineering staff of NN itself. We have 4,000 IT staff around NN globally, to make sure that we can cope with all that new technology that's coming towards us. So that's, for me, the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I understand. And Anke, now going to you, because another aspect of the modern economy is the emerging hybrid working environment. Or let's say it's actually already emerged, so I would put it more in the general words that it's digital workspace. Can you talk us through about your experience with this? And how do you deal, for instance, with the big tech suppliers versus your infrastructure on premise?
Sure. Before I do that, I would like to react a bit on what Rob was saying.
Oh.
So Dr. Paul Iske was telling us about complexity and complex environments. So one of the things that our clients want is something really complex, that we know is complex, disguised in something really simple. Just with one click, no hurdles to be able to have a service or have a product, have a new mortgage, change the mortgage, do whatever you need as a client. And I think this is a challenge of all of us in the audience, but also my challenge to make stuff that I know is quite complex, and I don't even know your complexity, but I know counting it all up is pretty much complex and difficult, but we need to make sure that it doesn't look that way, because we want to have easier interaction with the clients. They want to have easy interaction with us, and they want to feel like, be able to do that at any point in their time, not our time, their time. So I think this is the big challenge that we all have. So now I will move over to your questions about hybrid working. So I think we are here now. A couple of years, we have all been working at home, so we have been locked down for a long time, and that development has learned us that working from home and doing almost everything from home or wherever you are in the world is possible. And I know this put quite a strain on this part of the industry. So I worked at the company at that point in time where it was impossible that the whole company would log on at the same time in the morning, because systems would just drop. So nobody would have access to Teams or Skype that we still had at that time. And this is one development that has really changed the way we look at how we do work, where we do work, and when we do work. And this is not only true for colleagues, people in our company, but also true for interaction with our clients. So we do expect that we can access our back office systems that are hosted by Segeka, in my case, or in the public cloud, or by some SaaS provider. My colleagues want to be able to access these systems from wherever they are. And they are not living in the country that our offices are in. And they expect this all to be seamless, all to be always available and secure. And this is the challenge. So this sounds already easy for the people that are my clients, that I'm working for, but I know it's quite difficult. But this is, I think, the challenge that we have. And I see this growing and growing, so I think we will never get back to the way we worked before. And another development that I see is that because of scarcity of resources, we now have people from all over the world working for us. They are not working in our offices, they're working in a location that they like themselves, and they work whenever they think it's a good idea. So we need to be able to provide, I would say, a seamless working environment for them to be able to work for our customers, work for our partners, as if they were in the office. And this poses bandwidth problems, connectivity issues, VPNs that are on and off, and all kinds of things that probably is your daily work, and a little bit also my daily work. But this is, I think, the challenge that we have seen. I think we've overcome the biggest hurdle there, but it will never be less. It will only become more.
Yeah, here your keywords are always available, fast and secured.
Absolutely.
So if you're now coming down to the chain, to the facilitators, Martijn, let's start with you. What's then how the customer's needs influence your investment decision? I'm not talking about particularly these customers, but your in general customers.
Well, ultimately, you try to facilitate wherever the workloads are going to be put. They're going to be put into data center facilities, whether it's an application, a content, a service that they take to the end market, whether it's the consumer market or the B2B market. Our job is to make sure that the underlying infrastructure is available, and that's a redundant infrastructure, reliable infrastructure, and a secure infrastructure. And in Europe, we've seen traditionally a concentration in the FLAP, Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and it's really moving south, east, and north. And the job of players like Alex, Eurofiber, Marcel, and X Infrastructure is to make sure that the infrastructure is available, so that the providers of the services to Nationale Nederlanden and others that the infrastructure is available to do that.
And Alex, from your side, do you want to add something like these customers' needs, how much they impact your strategy of the company in the long term, short term?
Yeah, because you've just heard around remote working, so that's access to lots of different locations, and that's high capacity, low latency. Low latency is really important. You talk about DC to DC connectivity, which is a different game in itself, because that's where the cloud guys are. And then you have the public cloud versus private cloud. You have the hybrid market. So you have lots of different objects that all basically need to be connected together, and that's where the infrastructure comes together. And I think in Amsterdam, particularly, people forget, and in the Netherlands, they forget. We're in France and Germany and Belgium. Less than 50%, even in the Netherlands, of locations still have fiber. So that basic connectivity isn't even there for half of the population. And so we've got a long way to go before we get that basic digital infrastructure in place ubiquitously in one country, and then you need to think about connecting other countries. So the journey that we have in terms of investment in digital infrastructure is enormous to get to the point where everyone can just seamlessly be able to connect to whatever they want to connect to. And every segment is different. The healthcare is different to education is different to banking, and every single segment has a slightly different set of requirements, and we have to put an infrastructure in place that enables all of those.
Yeah. So actually, we're just at the start of our journey here.
It feels like we're pretty mature. We've been doing this as Eurofiber for 20 years, but there's as much to do as we've already done in the past, so that makes it really exciting.
And it's obviously that the consumer's needs leads us to the exponential growth of data in general. So if I go again now to our corporate angle, Rob and Anke, how do you deal with this enormous data? And of course, we need to process it in the reliable way as well. Can you a bit to talk us through this digital journey in your organizations?
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay. So yeah, so also there I take a little bit of a different approach. I've lived and worked in organizations where data was the new gold, and that we harmonized all our data models into one data model that has to be, let's say, implemented in all our source systems. We were heavily working on one big data lake, later on a data mesh. So yeah, we really approach it from a technology point of view in the beginning. Right now, if I look how we're doing it in Nationale Nederlanden, we're taking way more a customer approach also there. And so instead of just focusing very much on data, you focus on value for customers. And that is then derived from what's the information you need to get that value to the customers. And that then, let's say, dictates the kind of data you need. So instead of just making sure that you have all the data in one seamless data model in one place and that everybody can play around with it, it's more a laser-guided approach to how you get value for customers, and also how you deal with data and data to information, information to actions, and action into the meaningful value in a, let's say, a way that's also appreciated by the customers. A lot of things that have been done also is pretty scary stuff for customers still. So you see that, let's say, I think the needle is moving. So I think people are more and more willing, especially what was just shown on Facebook, where you share your darkest secrets within 5 minutes to people totally unknown to you. But let's say in the more mature consumer market still that we are in, and when you're dealing with pensions and when you're dealing with life insurances and really important things in people's lives, I mean, the use of data is also something you have to be very cautious about, and not just rigorously take it from a technology point of view. So also there, I think customer focus, putting also the skills, knowledge, and expertise behind it that is required for that, and that's the use technology to the better good of, let's say, the value towards your customers instead of just taking it from a technology perspective only.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to add to that is what I see is that we have been looking at data as an innovative area and artificial intelligence. What I see now is that it's normalizing. So I think data has come into every business process, data from internally, but also external data. So we see that the use of data in, I would say, the regular process is increasing every day. Every day we use more data, we find more sources that will tell us more about how we can better serve the client. So to change the service provision, or even to predict if people will come in arrears for their mortgage, for example. We use a lot of data, for example, on salaries and on where the houses are, and so we get lots of public data that we combine with internal data, and we do that, we develop that every day, and that is on the client side. I also see another development, and that is the load of data that we need is very big in the financial world on quarter end, month end, year end. So we need some kind of flexibility to get that load through. And I don't need it every day, but I do need it at certain points in time. And I did have some pretty nasty moments when I forgot to have a guaranteed cloud space at Azure when I had to do a quarter end at my previous company. We were not able to do so, because they put all the load on Teams, less load on flexible use like I was doing, and I almost could not get my quarterly figures out. So that was not a very nice moment. So I think it's very important for companies like ours to understand, to have some flexibility in using load. And last but not least is really the time criticality. So in dealing rooms, but also in treasury, having your data in earlier than your competitors gives you the difference between making money or losing money. So their latency and all these other things is very important, and I think these things are getting more and more important. So I think looking at you guys serving us, I hope that you will be investing in things like fiber and all the stuff that I do not know about, and I don't want to know about your complexity. Make it simple for me, please. But this is what I see happening. So what Rob is saying, the use of data is increasing. We are careful, but it's really, people have now understood where it creates value. So it's getting more normalized in all kinds of processes. And this is creating more load, more space that we need. And I can just continue that story exponentially.
So it's the enormous data amount. You have to process in a reliable way, but it's also you're working a lot with the peaks, actually, of the data. What does it require to implement from your organizations to sustain all this data demand? But on the other side, of course, you're targeting cost-efficient way or cost-efficient solutions. How to balance there?
I don't know yet. So I think this is a challenge we have to figure out ourselves together. So I think all of the companies that you will, I think, encounter have cost challenges. It's a fact of life. So we need to deal with this ever-growing need of being able to process data and making it meaningful, while at the same time doing it cost-efficient. And I think flexibility is one answer to it. So I don't need everything on 24/7, 365 days a year. I do need it at certain points in time. So how can we find models that we can have flexible payment for whatever we do? And it's already there to a certain extent, but I think we can actually explore a little bit more on how we can understand our load, what load can we get rid of, and how can we really smoothing this out, not only for me, but maybe across industry. I cannot see that, but you guys have the view of a bigger part of the industry.
It's a really interesting theme because it's something that we actually set up a separate company 4 years ago to tackle exactly this point within Eurofiber, which is this scaling of bandwidth demand. So this is more on the bandwidth side, but it's a similar concept, whereby you saw peak load requirements and people didn't, and bandwidth demand has grown so significantly that the new standard is, where it used to be sort of 50 or 100 MB, the new standards are gigs and 10 gigs and plus. But because it's bursty, our customers, corporates, want it at a particular moment. So we set up a company just focused on software-defined scaling the physical network. And it's exactly to raise this point. And this is becoming, the big financial institutions are always ahead. But in 5 years' time, other corporates take it over. And then schools start looking at it. And the whole society basically wants to work that way. And so that's actually, we're investing a lot in this type of scalability and flexibility to enable these types of solutions. Yeah. And it's a big theme. It's a really big theme.
I think what would be interesting for me to understand is that for me the biggest challenge is not to collect the data, is to get rid of the data or to access the data. So I think we have huge retention periods for our data. And it's funny, just if you just try to use it in practice, it's not in the PowerPoints anymore, just to access your data that you stored, let's say, 25 years ago. A lot of the applications that are needed to access the data are no longer in our environments because they have a life cycle themselves without backwards traceability for the data. So, just making sure that you can also still use the data that you store already for all that time. So that's, I think, more a challenge. And also to get rid of data, because storing it is very easy, but having somebody that says, we don't need this anymore, it's a very dangerous call nowadays. People are more willing to say, yeah, let's just keep it. Let's keep it for another 10 years. It's also good for all of you, apparently. It's not always good for customers, because too much data is also too much confusion. That's for me more the challenge.
Yeah. And looking specifically at the customers' needs, increasing customers' needs, and maybe taking a more top-down view now on the industry, what are the challenges for the digital infrastructure today?
I think the biggest challenge is to serve the businesses that serve end customers in the sense that they want to provide better user experience often driven by lower latency, by higher reliability, by more security. That means that you cannot run everything from a few places. You need to distribute the networks whilst maintaining the resiliency and the reliability. So that means that diverse, triverse, quadverse, different routes to get to certain areas. There's geopolitical. We look at it really from a geopolitical standpoint. There are petabytes of data that are traveling from Asia to Europe and backwards again. Almost everything, to use an example, currently flows through Egypt and through the Suez Canal and then crosses across Egypt. So there's a lot of focus on getting other overland routes via the Caucasus, the Caspian Sea, and then through the Black Sea, and then it hits Europe in Bulgaria, and then goes on to Western Europe. Well, the Bulgarian infrastructure is not necessarily as advanced as, for instance, the Dutch or the German or the UK infrastructure. So a lot of investments are needed to facilitate those needs from those parties who operate on a global basis. To get access to reliable infrastructure or to invest in it, and certainly in countries that are not as mature as Western Europe is a challenge for players like us. But it's the fun, right? That's also where the fun comes in, and that also, quite frankly, where you can make a bit of money, because if you deal with it well and you can serve the customer what they need, then there's a market for it.
And Alex, you would like to add anything to the challenges of the digital?
Yeah, funnily enough, we think that Western Europe is pretty advanced, but it's not in terms of fiber penetration. So even in Germany, which is an enormous country, has huge potential, has terrible, terrible connectivity challenges. And so even getting that up to par with the Netherlands or even with Belgium is going to take another 5 to 10 years. And it's sheer investment. It's literally digging up the roads and laying new fiber cables. And the only way to do that is to ensure that the regulatory environment enables you to do so. And sometimes it gets in the way. Sometimes it takes you months and months and months to wait on a permit. So if we think about digitalization of these basic processes that take place in municipalities across one country, but actually across Europe and then further, we could win so much time by applying a bit of digital savviness to these basic processes. We could speed up the deployment significantly, which ultimately would help, society. So there's some regulatory things that we're on it, but it's taking a long time to win.
And the
that.
regulatory part is not just for the networks; it's also for many people in the audience here, data centers, right?
Yeah.
So it's of very few countries have a national policy. Often it's run at a municipal level, and all these data centers, the new facilities, want to be powered by green energy, ideally water cooled. Who makes the decision? What industry gets what percentage of the incremental green energy that is being produced in a particular area? That's not particularly well organized, and there's a lot of progress that still can be made there. And I spent a lot of my career in Asia. If you look at countries like South Korea or Japan, we can learn a lot from what is happening there. I totally concur with what you said.
Maybe to touch a bit on these regulations we just mentioned. And of course, it's also another challenge which is increasing, unfortunately, also for all of us, but which is very necessary. And I'm talking about the regulation, the data security, assurance of the data, how to process it in the reliable way again, but also the resilience, digital operation resilience, particularly for the banks, right? Where responsibility lie here? Is it now more within the facilitators? Is it the large organizations who should take care of it? Who is responsible?
We're
I guess
all
we all are.
responsible, yeah.
I guess we all are responsible. And of course, I'm part of the financial sector, so we are heavily regulated. And I think if you talk about data, also the requirements that we have to report on ESG, on footprints, on using responsible the resources in our world, we heavily feel that responsibility. But we will be pushing it downward. So it's not it's our responsibility, but we are also challenged, and I think for good reasons, to find out if the people that we work with, the partners that we work with, are as responsible as they think, they say. It has to be evidenced. So I think this is a factor in the industry, your industry, my industry, that we need to take into consideration. And I think this is a conversation that we will be having more and more and more. And it also will be fact-based. It's just not talk anymore. It's something that we have to provide evidence for. We have to be innovative, and I hope that this terminal illness that we have starting at 6 years, going to school that Paul Iske was explaining us about, will help us to find new ways of being more responsible with the planet, because it's not an easy challenge that we have there. So I think it's a combined responsibility, and if you don't feel it, we will make you feel. We have to.
Yeah, but the good thing is, I think people do feel it, and it's not just us; it's actually employees. I mean, people come. Certainly, the new graduates, they come in and they say, "What are you doing on privacy or on ESG?" So you have some really healthy discussions, and it's a bottom-up requirement, not only a top-down imposition from a regulatory perspective, which I think makes it a really powerful discussion that we're having internally.
Yeah, maybe to add one example, I was interacting with AWS a couple of years ago, and then one of my employees said, "But did you read this article on how there was a very negative article somewhere?" And I didn't really realize that I should have asked a question to AWS on how their response is, what they were doing about it. And I really felt put on the spot, rightfully, by my employee, who was telling me, "Okay, you really need to think about this." And then I contacted my contact at AWS to really challenge them as far as I can, of course, but I think it was a really good challenge. So I do agree that it is something that is coming from people, coming from every individual, and it has to start there as well.
I've been, but I have to spoil your party.
Oh, it's the time.
So it's you have the time. I'm pretty sure you have many more things to tell, but I'm afraid we
have
have
other
to
problems. Sure.
stop this.
But I think that we actually kind of rounded on the sustainability topic, which was my last question, but obviously not the least. And I think this is one of those key challenge for the industry in general. So maybe, I don't know if you have still a couple of words to finish here, because I think I want to finish actually our panel on this one, to see how, if sustainability already became really the decision or the consideration for your decisions within organizations and within the industry.
So I think I've been a couple of months ago on a very interesting congress about sustainability, and I was also invited over there. And what they told me over there is that if you take away the human aspect, so the politics, the hassle, I mean, technology has the answers to counteract the biggest challenges that we face on climate, on circular economies. So I think, and what they told me over there, and that really sank into me, is that the generation that we are here is the first generation that's fully aware of what is happening with our climate. But the scary part is, they also told me, we are the last generation that can do something about it. And they brought up two aspects, and I think that's also relevant for the audience. I think it's IT for green and green IT. So, I mean, green IT is basically the obligation we all have ourselves to make sure that the way we use technology has a low carbon footprint, is really taking care of the scarce resources that we all use, like electricity, like, let's say, also the way we produce our technology. And IT for green, that's where the really interesting stuff comes, because technology, if we use it right, and we take away, let's say, the hassle between countries, politics, let's say, value chains, I mean, we have the solution, we have the key in our hands to use technology for the better good of the climate. And that's, I think, a cry for help of all of us, including myself, to make sure that that should be the number one on our priority list, I would say.
Yeah. Now, we will then finish on this
conclusion.
positive note. Thank you very much to the speakers. And I hope everybody enjoyed, and I wish everyone a very productive and successful day.
And thank you, Ludmila, for your moderation. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists. Most appreciated.